Hello, it's Brian Whitten and AT Art. I have come back to put another video up today because if we look at where I left the last video with the Mars, the Moon, I wanted to come back because where we were left was understanding that every race of people above the Mediterranean here, or the races of people that were above the Mediterranean at the beginning of the 6,000 year cycle, we're going to have problems breeding. Before I go on, if you're 12 or 13 years old or younger, could you get your parents or guardians to have a look at this video first, please? And like I said, if you've been here before, we're well and truly aware of why the pyramids are here, and that our cycles of Earth around the Sun are very much manufactured, and have been because in actual fact what happened many millions of years ago, it would appear that our system was hit by some galactic event that has caused the corruption of all the people, the genome of the people that were in the solar system. That was where we are. I'm not going to go back to explain too much of where we've already been. We've put a lot of videos up here, and I think the people that are really watching and interested are in actual fact probably more interested in just moving onwards. So I do urge you to go back and at least watch the last half a dozen videos if you haven't been to the channel before. For those of you who have, that is where we left off. We were talking about the other planet that's now behind the Sun that I now install is going to be put into our solar system so that the races of people that eventuated from these areas of the globe have somewhere to breed, because we can't breed on planet Earth anymore. That is one of the lessons we're getting, given we are seeing that corruptions with giant people or yetis that we see within the highlands of the Himalayas, or we see, and there is, if you wanted to go over and look at the islands of Japan, the same thing, that the Japanese islands, there's a video, if you look up on YouTube, with a giant guy that's 12 foot high at least. He's huge, and he's not proportioned, he's like a sumo wrestler. He's a very solid man. And he's walking down the street in Japan. I would urge you to go and look that up on YouTube. It looks real to me. It could be fake, but it doesn't look fake. It looks real. It looks old, yes. But imagine that sort of thing happening not once off, but every race, which is another problem. And this is the problem bore by this very strong horizontal field of magnetism. It is on the plane, or I should say on the equatorial areas of Earth once we stand straight. So next year, I've already explained how that all happens. I will go through a little bit of planetary motion stuff, and we'll also look at a couple of rocks in the end of the video. So if you're interested, I will try and keep the videos pretty quick. It's pretty hard sometimes when it's so complicated to process. But next year what we're doing is we're sitting with a planet straight up like this, and the moon is being moved in and out towards the sun to supply the seasons that we otherwise wouldn't have, because with a straight Earth like that, you do not have the seasonal changes that are created by a tilt on the axis. And that is what we'll discuss. And like I said, just understand that what we're being told is the makeup of Earth's populace was in actual fact 3 planets. All of us had different races, different genome, different evolutionary paths, you know, and different environments, because we were all on different planets. That is why the variations take place on so many. We've discussed at this point the very worst case is the very top half here, and the behaviour of the people, this eating of the young and such things. Obviously if that spread right through the races, and it does, that's a major problem. So we'll go on from that point, and we'll discuss some of the finer ideas or concepts of the movement of the moon. This is yet another simple diagram. I'm not a physicist, nor am I an astrophysicist or any, I'll be honest with you, I could have gone and consulted books, and I thought, no, I'm not going to. I'm actually going to just work on what I know I've been told from the cycles. Okay, so the cycles of Earth and the movement of Earth, whether it be laid, you know, flat on its axis, on the horizontal plane, through all the cycles, and thus make the assumptions, although it's not a good thing to make assumptions, but understand what you know. Right? So if you know a given fact, will work from what you know, that you know, and therefore your assumptions are not really based on hearsay, they're based on the fact that you know. So that's how I go. I'll go with that flow. And I've drawn here the horizontal plane of the sun, and I've drawn these donut fields like this, but as much as I've drawn them like that, that's not right. It's just a lot easier for me to explain in this way. They're actually, in my opinion, the donut field that you see like this is where the horizontal band of the sun is very wide, so it's not going to grip and control the mass like it does within the very narrow bands of the portion of that horizontal band. But this here, where I see that it loops up like this, I don't think it's like that at all. I think what happens is if you cut an orange in half and you scoop out the inside and have the skin, that the skin, if you put an orange peel of varying size oranges over the top of here, you would in actual fact do exactly the same. So in other words, an orange peel like that, another orange peel like that, right over the top of the sun and down to the other side of the horizontal plane on this side, would be what we would be see in those horizontal planes as being more realistic. It's more like this purely and simply for explanation purposes. We know our Earth is out here. I have drawn this to be the portions here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's actually incorrect. That should be on the 7th portion, but it's probably irrelevant for what we're trying to teach today, or at least my concept and understanding, and I'm not teaching anything, it's just merely what I am seeing happen. The moon is moved in and out on the horizontal plane here continuously, where I would expect they're not going to come in here and crash comets into it every 3 months to get it to come back and so on and so on. What they'll do is use the bodies that are already here within the solar system to drive this motion backwards and forwards with the moon. I would see also that when the big body that we see now that gets used to manage the movement of the Earth back into this plane to stop us going up here very, very quickly, this is the problem. We're coming up into the narrow space here. We have a north facing a south. It's attracted in its flat stick, and when it goes jamming in like that, the planet actually would just disintegrate. It says that that's how fast it is. It's 60,000 miles straight up, and it might only be 4 minutes, but that's what happens, and the planet would be destroyed in that instance. But like I said, they manage this. They manage the moving of landmass away from the equator, which is very strong, and we don't want that electromagnetic field causing all those abnormalities in birth rates and so on. So that's why that happens. There's obviously the animal world as well. We've got to consider that the animals that sit and reside within that on Earth's surface would be a problem. So that's why I'd say that there's a situation there where the management is continuous. In respect to the movement of the moon though, I would expect it to be driven naturally, and what we'll find is that the rotation of Earth on the field here is creating a very electromagnetic field from its rotation. The moon at the present point in time, in the cycle that we're on with the tilt of the axis, the moon technically doesn't spin. It's the same face of the moon that's facing Earth as it goes around, so it doesn't spin on its axis as such, not the way we perceive Earth does. The two inner planets, we say Mercury and Venus, their days per, their hours in a day is extremely long, right? So Mercury, on the other hand, if you've got to look at that, it's an 88-day year. Right? And what I've done here is I've added 88, so you can see that 176, 264. We're told our hours in a day here are roughly 21 to 22 hours. We're told that it's a 5-month cycle to go in and out from here, or out and in from Earth. We'll start from Earth and say, okay, well there's 1, 2, 3, 4, so that's 5 movements. 1, 2, 3, 4. So what I'm saying here is it's actually the cycle of Mercury here that's being used to drive this back out. The days here is 225. It looks like at times it'll come by and pick both these up in a line and push the moon back. So it's actually the moon here is going to be cycling and spinning. It will not be stopped. and its cycle and spin is retained by the magnetic earth or field concentrated, because obviously this field, as wide as it gets there, the Earth's magnetic field will do the same. So it will affect, so you'll get the meshing of these fields that drive the planet away. Now remember that the planet is not going in and out like this, it's actually travelling along this way. Right? And the Earth's travelling along this way. The rotational plane of Earth, or the magnetic plane or axial plane, is creating a magnetic field, and it in turn drives this away from there, it drives it further and faster this way, and it just comes back through, and because of the speed, that's another matter, it is the speed of rotation that increases the speed of the magnetic field, and once the magnetic field is going fast, it's able to allow it to go through these portions here. And that's what's happening, and here it gets too slow again, so it can't go further. Then it gets this coming the other way, which then meshes with the plane of Mercury and then sometimes Venus, which then speeds the moon up again, and it is able to move back through here. It's not going between these as such, it's still travelling this way, but that we're seeing the expanding and contracting plane of rotation of the moon through the fields here. And that's what they do, and it's the magnetic planes of these inner planets driving it this way, and the magnetic plane of the Earth driving it back that way. But it's still coming at us this way. Right? It's still going around the sun. It's just that as it goes through, it goes in and out like this. And this is where we get, because it's timed, the mass of the moon would have to be exactly the mass of Earth with the water in it. Okay? In other words, it's going to have a heart of gold. That's why we see a lot of the gold within the Egyptian, all the way through Egyptian mythology. The top of the pyramid's supposed to have been gold and all this sort of thing as well. That's affected for where the gold is. The gold will be in the centre of the core of the moon, which is how its mass is equal to that of the Earth with the water in it. But it definitely has to be that way. And like I said, it would be this one here driving it because its days are 88. Okay, so we know that what we're going to see here, if we start there, we're going to come 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's our 4 or 5 months. And if I come back to this crop circle, this is where we're seeing that 5-month cycle, or 4-month. It's basically what you're getting is 3 months of ovulation within a 10-month period. So if I went from here, 1 month, 2 month, 3 month, 4 month, 5 months, 6 months, 7 month, 8 month. That's if you go that way, but I'm thinking what you'll get is a month here. Like it'll sit here and then it'll gradually get sped up again and go away when the moon is, getting sped up. So it might be sitting here and saying like, that's one month, 2 months, 3 month, 4 month, 5 month, and then say 6 months, 7 month, 8 month, 9th month. So you're picking up every month, and you're still getting through 4 years before you're actually getting every star sign through this process. That explains what's happening to Earth. You'll note that you're also getting these revolutions here in one way or another, like it's a magnetic force, in other words, what's driving it in and out. And also when the big planet, when we're talking about the big planets moving in to cover Earth when it comes up into that plane, that week where we would be ripped really violently, so that month where it comes in and sits very close like this, it's going to be pretty cold in November this year on the whole globe. When that comes in, and the planet that we see up there now, that's a big body, it's bigger than Earth, huge, it's way bigger than Earth. Once that comes in plane, it'll probably be made to drag the moon away with it, and when it's moving towards Earth, I would also expect its rotational speed to be not quite very much. It's going to be spinning, but pretty slowly, be within the horizontal plane. When it hits Earth, I would expect it's going to get sped up then, and its mass then will drag the moon away with it. It'll actually be propelled back, just like the moon did, propelled back the other way from the rotational plane of Earth, and take the moon away with it, incurring a rotational spin on the moon as it pulls it away. That's what I think that's actually going to do. Albeit that may be a pretty rough explanation as to what I'm talking about. I'm absolutely certain that I don't know why, if we look at the rotation of Venus and Mercury, where they are now. Their days are like 1400 and 2800 hours long. That's for one rotation. So it's actually, they're almost stopped as such, like the moon. There's no rotating fields to make them turn. Sure, they spin through space like this, but this one here, like I said, the moon goes 1.8 years. It'll do a whole loop around the sun in a 1 year of Earth, which is going too quickly. And that's the problem. Mars, as it is, would not hold the oceans on the water in that sort of environment. This is how I would see the other body that is now near the sun being used. In other words, so once it gets skipped out across and come within the ring of rotation of Mars here, this is what I've just got here, and we're coming around, going anti-clockwise around the sun, and I'll just say that this is Mars here, but this grey thing here, we'll call that the planet that's sitting there now, that's sitting near the sun. And it's sitting on here. It may or may not rotate. It doesn't really matter that it does or it doesn't, but I'm absolutely certain what we're going to see is that the Mars will spin around that body this way, from North Pole to South Pole, keeping a North Pole like this on the planet. It may even have a slight tilt on the axis to give us a seasonal change, but we're also going to see a lot of heat generated or surface light reflected from that planet, if that's the case. In the case of this, I'm seeing we're only going to be able to move one body here, that one. This one lying sideways. You can't have it lying upways. I think that initially that's how it's going to be. I could be wrong. I'm just putting up, like I said, this is purely conjecture to a degree. The planet's there and we've got to breed somewhere. I can only think that Mars is going to be the situation. It might be that they crash all their tanks and army boats and everything on this and use that to live on rather than the other way round. The other thing I would like to mention, that in the event of the cycle where we are being moved from here to here, because in the 15,000 year cycles that would appear to be what happens, that they go from here to here, back to there within those cycles, and I would say that that coincides with Nibiru coming back into the system, that if the Earth is off plane and out here in the wider surface, that it does not have the magnetic effect that it would otherwise have if it was in here. Yes, I would think that when Earth is going up and down in there with a straight axis, that it's actually getting driven by the movement up and down. So in other words, they've got the way they've set up the inside of our Earth, I would expect has far, far, far more inside it than what we are led to believe. But that's certainly what I would see there, and I would certainly see the movement up and down there. Probably not call upon the reservoir of water within the planet as much, certainly because the melt would be, you know, one pole 6 months, the other pole the next 6 months. Now I've changed the subject now. I've had enough about that planetary motion bit, which I have absolutely no idea about. Like I said, I'm not qualified, but certainly from a physics perspective, I thought it was worthwhile putting that up and possibly understanding a little bit about how we may perceive things work next year. Listen, I'll insert a picture of this rock just now so you can see that this is a little rock I call the little boat rock, which is why I picked it up and kept it. I've kept rocks for many, many years before I realised what was actually written on them, because I can tell you now I didn't realise all this was on rocks. I'm going to go through a few videos here and just show you a couple of bits of interest and just see that'll let you know that there are faces all over the rocks, and you know, UFOs, bridges, cities. Our history is actually written on them. It's really quite an amazing thing that you can see here that there's a person's face here, not so as clearly there, but I will just go through a few of these, because when you move the light around, the visions change. You know, what you're actually seeing changes, and you could say it's coincidental. It is not coincidental, it's actually by design. It's a very, very, very complicated process to make them. They're actually made. I would expect most of them drop out the back of a laser array thing that they, you know, sit them in there and they just all get cut and the information gets put on them in many, many wondrous ways. And you may dispute it, but it's like you go from one place to the rock to the next, you're getting the same story. You're either getting cutters, you're getting diggers, you're getting UFOs, or you're getting people screaming and their face with their mouth open. Sometimes it's more prevalent on some rocks than others, but you look at the rock that I'm showing you, it's a very small rock, it's very simple. Yet the movements are changing, faces are changing. You see this one here before, it's a crested headed guy. This is who he says we actually evolved from, this bloke here. Not from an ape. We evolved from a reptilian like that with a crested head. See his eye here and his nose and his mouth? You see that? He's actually who we evolved from. That's on multiple rocks over and over. It's actually on huge big boulders. That is who he is saying we evolved from. And when they were, the reptilians were here, so we evolved together in this solar system with the planets the way they were, with 3 of them here. Obviously, if a developing race like us, and we're new to this sort of thing, if you know what I mean, they're not going to put a whole lot of reptilians here with us, because it's really hard to explain that in a theory that we're going to get taught, because we don't get taught the right history. We really don't. There's no history here. They have to leave one here. The people on our Earth not so long back were, far different people. I'll move along because, like I said, I'll just go to another place on the rock and you'll see what else I can come up with there. Now this is, once again, I've just changed the light angle here from another point, and you can see the whole story changes now. Where I had a face, that's exactly the same part of the rock. I've just changed the angle of the light to another point now. And so now the face that was here is gone. We've got UFOs flying across the valley here, mountain ridges and whatnot. And sometimes you'll get a big arc like this, or an arc like that one there, where you're getting a round thing. Where you're seeing, getting told, we come through and we cut the land masses here. Other times it'll be tidal waves. I'll keep going. Here it looks like you're getting sort of like tidal wave sort of thing in here as well. I've moved this now to that same portion of the rock, but I've turned the rock around now, and so I've now come to the same corner, but pointing at the rock at a different angle, and we'll see what transpires with that. I'll move along a bit. Now here I come with the side light, and you watch what happens now. I've just turned off the microscope light, I get my other light, and then I put it on from an angle, and this is what you'll see a lot. Every time you get the light in the right spot, you'll quite often get this. And you watch what we see here, transpires here and here. And you'll get these highlighters come up and you know you're in the right spot. Look what happens again. And just watch what you see in this portion here. It really is quite an amazing rock, this one. Like I said, albeit, look at it, it's only a little tiny thing. And look at what we're seeing here. Some of it, like I said, sometimes you sit here and I do this. I've left a rock that I found the other day at a river. I was going to chuck it up. I thought, oh, I've had enough, I've really got to get away from this for a bit. And I just keep getting these things that I know I've got to put up because they're important with what's going down, especially when I've just told every, person from the North Mediterranean, which includes me, that we cannot breed next year. It was necessary to follow up. So what's what I'm seeing here, you see what I mean, it's very easy to see. It's again, we have the crested head again. This is another part of the rock. It's the same guy, it's a guy with a crest on here. So maybe the South Americans with their crested heads or their hair, with their mohawks, and the Indians do the same as well. That they actually may have been mirroring a people that they may have seen in the past. Quite possibly our ancestors that look like this. We once had quite a big thing or suture on our head, which may have, obviously over millions of years, gone away. Or come, who knows? Like I'm saying, we could have looked the way we look now, 60 million years ago. These may be the people that have evolved from what we look like now, but they've had 60 million years of evolution and they look like this now. There's a lot of variations based on what we're told. So they're going to vary wherever they go. The mutations that have caused problems with us, you could say, well, maybe the whole thing here is a lesson that you cannot leave the solar system. That's a very, very sensible, or, you know, it's a very sensible argument, that. It is a very sensible argument to say, well, listen, why are we getting all these sequences to purely say you cannot go out anywhere wherever you want? But I don't think that's the case. Now this is another part, it's on the same rock, but I've just moved further around, and sometimes there's things that I see and I'll stop. There's actually something that I saw here. It looked like a little figure in there, standing there, so sometimes I'll just stop and I'll think, okay, well that's where I'll do it, and I'll turn that, as you're seeing, as me flashing the microscope light off. So I look for what I want to get with the microscope light and turn that off, and then use the external light. So now you're seeing the external light, and sometimes, like I said, you'll get these little marks here and you'll see them light up because they're telling you which way to come in with your light so that you can see the image that's actually there they want you to see. Some of it is spectacular beyond belief. I probably won't spend too long on this one. I do understand why I stopped at this one. It looked like there were, you know, cities and whatnot there, and, you know, possibly, you know, you can get places and think, well, yeah, that may look like a city, it may look like this. I'm just going to move along here a little bit. If I see something of interest, I'll stop. And sometimes you'll think of whether or not it's actually tidal waves or whatever. Some are very, very easy once you get the light in the right place, like the face was I just showed you. I think I move across here because I see something in here. So I might just let that play a bit and just have a chat with you. This is what I see here, this face here. See this? So that's why I stopped here. I move in and I start seeing this person here looking this way at what's going down here. It looks like there's, and like I said, you'll see destruction and whatnot because it's inevitable. In the end, you've got to destroy the planet to tip it over to push it out to Mars. So you're going to see this. And you'll also see this as, maybe they say, well, we're more than one way to skin a cat. So, you know, like I said, it's very, very easy to see that facial feature there. And sometimes you'll change the light and it'll turn from a human to a reptilian as well. Like, I mean, there's reptilians all over the rocks as well. They're saying that there are many, many people that evolved from humans, in would expect. I'm not going to just go through these rocks today because I'm actually going to, if you don't mind, I'll hopefully not be too long, but I'm actually going to get my laptop and bring it in here and put one of the rocks that I picked up the other day, and we'll have a look at it together, because the first thing it did was split, and when I put it under the microscope, the very first thing it did was show me a very clear facial feature in the middle of the rock. It's not the first time we've done that. I've shown you that before and found Africa, this inserted image of Africa. It was in the crack, it wasn't on the outside of a rock, it was after it cracked in half that I was able to see Africa. It was within the rock. It's the same as this other image, so we'll do that together, and I just wanted to show you that. I'll show you one other. Yes, it got interesting just at this point here, this there. Can you see that? There's actually a bloke sitting down at a table there. And you can see some guys back in the windows. Some of what you see on these rocks is really quite amazing. This once again is the same thing. I've turned it off and you watch who we see again. It's the same person. The same skull feature, with you get this arch back on the skull. It's like a crested skull. It's not only place two. I'll show you where we are seeing the very same thing. I wanted to show you that on this video because this is why I said to you, I knew I had them in this video. I put this rock under the other day and I thought, what made me actually do this is that it was boat shaped, and I said to you, we couldn't get boats across the equator. And I thought maybe I'll put that under and see what it came up with. It didn't come up with what I expected, but it came up with some things that were very much worthwhile looking at. This is once again, like I said, depending on where you hold the light, sometimes you can look like you've got motherships coming out of space, huge things, and hold the right light. You'll get all these little lights start flickering and getting red lights and green lights and different colours flicking off and on. I'll just let this play for a bit because that's what I see here. It does turn into somewhat of a vision of, you see like motherships coming through the atmosphere here a bit. Yeah, that one's not real good, like I said, but I'll just get it to the end and I'll play the next one for you. And once again we get to another portion of the rock, and you can see I just, generally like I said, I'll go up and down with the microscope light a few times, and my microscope light the switch turns off and on very quickly to on and off, so I can't sometimes get it the way I like it. So you watch what happens here, and I once again turn it off, get my microscope light off, run the external light again, and we'll see what happens here. And like I said, this isn't as good as those last few that I showed you. I just wanted to show you that it's a very regular thing. And you could say, yeah, well, it looks like mountains and everything, but really it does. It's very, very accurately done. It's got UFOs, and you see letters written on, you know, we've had characters, we've had animal life, we've had gorillas, we've had kangaroos, we've had all sorts of things expressed on the rocks and directly related to given places on the Earth's surface. It is really quite amazing that you would not believe our history is written in such a manner as to let us know what's happened to our planet multiple times in these incidents where it has to be moved, and there's tidal waves and the UFOs and mountain ridges and pyramids and all sorts of unusual things. I'll move on. Now we've gotten to the part where I actually want to put a rock I found the other day under the microscope, and we'll do it together. I have done this before, but we haven't done it for a bit, and I thought, well, you know, make a bit of a change here, then talk about the way things are. This is the rock I found. I'll shine the light on it. I know it's probably not going to focus up real good, but that's the rock there, right? So what happened is I picked it up and I looked at it and I thought, oh, well, that looks interesting, and then I chucked it on the ground and it immediately broke. And I know it sounds stupid, but I thought, oh, well, I might pick that up and take it home. But what I want you to watch is I put it on the table there so you can see it, and I've got this light here shining on it, and you watch what happens. I'll split it apart. Alright, so that is where it's split. Okay, so I want you to watch that. I'll take that bit up now. That's the inside of the rock, and I'm going to put it straight under there, and you can see where I've put it in, okay? That is the rock, and I've just moved it straight under, and it's in the broken side. And I want you to watch what you see there. And as you can see, that is the rock, and it's the inside of the rock without doubt. And that is on the inside of the rock. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my external light around, and we'll see what that does, because as you can see, it's not really difficult to see that there's a person's face right there with its nose, its mouth, its eye there. There's also another creature in here and another one there. I will show you what that looks like with zoomed in and with the light on. I'll zoom in first without using an external light. Now I've just zoomed in on that image, and as you can see, it's not difficult to see why you would stop here. It is amazing. It is, as I say, look, as you can see, that is a rock. Here it is here. This is the rock I'm holding underneath the microscope there, so I can just slide it back in here, and you can see the it's not difficult to see this face. It really is amazing at times, honestly. Bewilderment would probably be an underestimate of what the feelings are, I can assure you. Listen, before I go on, I'm just going to say we'll finish off with this rock by moving my external light around here. I'll show you what it looks like. It once again looks like this. It's an LED panel. I got it when we were camping, and that is with the microscope light. From a perspective of a proper expensive digital bifocal microscope I bought one, it cost me about $1,000, and you see none of this. The plane or focus is, or depth of field, if you were a photographer you would understand it more like that, but the plane of focus is way more narrow within one of those digital microscopes, so you probably wouldn't even see this. From a perspective of turning the light off and then seeing anything with a digital bifocal microscope, you'll forget it. You see nothing. You can have the microscope this far, that far from the rock, and have this light like that, and there's nothing. You see nothing at all. With this one, we're just seeing the microscope light. So what I'll do is I will finish up, but I'll finish up by just talking with you about a few things. I have probably a son that's pretty upset with me today because I didn't go where he probably thought I was going to go, and he was having difficulty because he's having some problems with vision and seeing things. And I sort of know where he's at to a degree. I'm hoping that what we're talking about here with this high, the power of this horizontal plane of the sun that we're approaching, causing the problems, is causing many problems in lots of respects. So as you can see now, this is the light that I'm using, the external light. Okay, so I've now turned off the microscope light, as you can see, and I can move this in, and depending on where I put it, it depends on what sort of vision I'm seeing. I'll go on. Look, I want to just say about the kids and everything we hear that have been maltreated to this point, and murdered, and the most barbaric behaviour against them, and you would think, why do these people let it happen? They've got to come back here and convince a planet full of people, and I think if their thought might be, listen, if we don't let it happen, that child is then within a situation where their life is that way, not just the poor, maybe some of them it's only 5 or 10 minutes, some of them could be a lifetime of brutality. So I suppose they sort of think, well, they've got to come back here and talk to us in a modern world and come and explain to us why they want to cut our countries up and move them all over the globe, because that's what they're saying they have to do, so that's the reality there. Look, as far as the behaviour of some in this process, like I said, we're being told it's the electromagnetics of our system on our mutations seem to be a very, very major problem, and they affect all of us in different ways depending on how our genome, through the process of evolution, has in actual fact been affected by whatever it was that hit all the planets, has in actual fact created a situation where it's mutated our genome, and ever since we've had to be in a situation where this management has occurred. You could say, well, maybe Brian, you're wrong with that, and that you've got a situation where people with these skills could come back here and just take what they want and kill everybody and eat us, right? That could be a concept that you may have, and it would be an understandable concept because of the management of the media and TV and radio and now movies and all such things. Look, I'll be honest with you, people with those skills that can do this on a river rock, and this is on the middle of a river rock, that's why I wanted to show you that's an unnecessary thing. That's what I'm saying, it's on every river rock, it's not just one, and it doesn't matter if they look fancy. I'll just insert a couple of rocks here. Look at these ones here. You could understand why you would pick them up. Truly, look at them. So if we look at these inserted images and look at the why you would pick these rocks up, is really quite easy to understand. They're really quite amusing to look at. At the time that this was found, I thought immediately my stepson, because he bought a pair of black and white striped sneakers when he was a young boy, or not a young boy, it was his first paycheck actually, and I told him he had overspent his money. He paid like $130 because they were on special. So, like I said, you can see why you would pick these rocks up. But then we look at these ones and they're very, very, very plain and ordinary. There's nothing particularly special about them. They're nice, but they don't stand out like the others. Yet they contain some of the most unbelievable information on them. This rock here, which is the chip rock. In the chip is this image here, which if you shone the light from somewhere else, it's this image here. And this image here, the very same place on the rock. It is amazing. So back to our rock here, and now I'll turn the light down and we will see what we can find together. Okay, and I will lie here because initially I was going to say, this is the first time I put the light on this rock. In reality I haven't. I spent half an hour and found that I had a reflection off the kitchen window, which was really ordinary. So I've come back this way. So now what I'll do is we'll move this around, and I won't go very quickly with the light, and I'll finish up and have a chat with you. And like I said, it's very, very unusual to find all this on a rock. I mean, I guess from a perspective of children, if you stop and think about children, if you would, for a minute, and think that every child has picked a rock up out of a river, as we did, I did with my brothers, you know, when we were young children, with my sons, the same, pick up a little skimmer. Yes, you pick up a little skimmer, we call them. They're a flat rock that you could skim across the top of the surface. We've all done this, all over the world. All us boys and girls, and we played in the ponds. We didn't realise we were picking up rocks that contain this sort of information. Our history of our world, we are led to believe, is something else, and it's untrue. We are taught many, many things that are untrue. So I'll move our external light around on our rock now, and we'll just see what it comes up with. And like I said, this rock is the centre of the rock. It's a split in the rock. It's the part that is within the rock, and broke upon me dropping it. So I thought it was worthwhile looking at it. And like I said, you would easily see why you would stop at that particular point. I generally find that what I'll do is, when I see a face like that that's so obvious, it generally wants me to look at a given point, so I tend to move that way, and I'll put it on the side of the image, and then I'll start moving it around, because it might be in here where I'm actually supposed to see what it is I'm supposed to be finding, you know, over in this part of the image. And you can do that, and sometimes you'll have people sitting down at chairs and tables and all sorts of weird and wonderful things. I can assure you now that some of the imagery you see is almost beyond belief. You'll have times where it's a UFO. You might move this slightly this way and get a slightly different face on that side of the image, you know. So it's a very, very unusual way that it is extremely high-tech, how it's done. It's matter transfer via laser. I would expect a lot of the megaliths we see around our world, as well as our mountain tops, and all those things that we see that are unexplainable. They are certainly explainable when you see this type of technology on not one rock, but every rock. And then say to yourself, well, if what we're seeing is like this, and what we're seeing is real and true, and it is without doubt, like I said, we've even seen tonight at least 3 of the same type of person or the same being, you know, and it's a regular thing. So it's a very unusual situation to have come to a point where you get to know that your very history, the history of mankind is written at our feet. It is an unbelievable thing. Look, I do, from a perspective of religion, realise that it's a very, very difficult thing we are at. We are finding out a situation here where what we've been taught and what our religious aspects are being challenged. Mine have been, you know, but I always say, like I said, what I'm seeing here is a situation where, in the shape of the rocks, it tells us who they're coming to, you know, look after, and it's all of us, you know, and it's not left here by some, you know, it's left here by our ancestors, and we're technically the same thing. We are the ancestors of they. We have not evolved because of our issues with what happened. They, on the other hand, have been able to evolve, but have obviously, would appear, require our spore to do so. And this is why we see, as we do, you know, we hear about it across the world, people getting abducted. And I think, you know, or cows getting lifted up out of, you know, farmers' paddocks and all such things, you know, like the udders removed from cows. That's because they can't breed in this new system on Earth. But I would expect on our new planet that we've discussed in Mars, or the way Mars will be made cycle the new body, if I'm incorrect, that we've got 24 hours a day there, and there's no reason why the cattle can't be bred there. And you know, we trade still as we always do. Like I said, the people coming here are us. They're not going to put us back in the caves here, ladies and gentlemen. You do not leave this. This is spectacular beyond belief. You don't leave this here and not want to come back here and teach people how to be good people. And then understanding what the problem was that drove the very best of men, probably, and women, to commit things they probably would never even perceive to even, you know, it just wouldn't exist. So I, you know, like, I can only hope that when we cross this thing, we cross it together, we get our, you know, ourselves organised. We've really got to get organised because we've got to know what crops to put in. It's going to be the middle of winter in November here. It's going to be bloody cold in mid-November. And then I would expect by the end of December we'll be in our first summer, but it will be global, and we need to understand what food processes we need to have on this planet. Certainly I would expect we are told from a Christianity point of view, although like I said I was raised a Christian. I'm certainly, I haven't gone to church since I was old enough to say no to Mum. I said no, I'm not going to church anymore. And that wasn't driven by what you'd probably expect. It was driven by me seeing a little girl come out of church. She was only about 6 or 7 years old. She'd gotten in a car. Her request from her father was, "Can I have an ice cream please, Dad?" That was the words. I still remember it now. That's what I mean. I was only like 14 or 12 or something. You know, what this little kid asks for that, who the people had just left the church, and this little child got this backhanded like this across the back seat of the car. How dare you ask for that when you've walked out of church? And I thought to myself, how dare you hit your daughter like that when you've walked out of church? So, like I said, it's what you see in life and how you look at it is probably what makes, you know, us different from each other to a degree, you know. That's just how I took upon that, and that is why I've never ever gone to church. It was one of those things I just thought, no, that's not for me. I'll find, you know, I always believed in God, so it was never an issue. So, and I say with leaving this here, like this, on all the little river rocks I've just shown you, that it is without doubt the people that come here have the ability, if they wanted to just go bang and get rid of everybody and eat everybody and do all that sort of stuff. You do not do all that with this here. Okay, this is here to make sure every one of us knows that we're protected by our ancestors. Like I said, our ancestors as much as we are they. And I will leave it at that, and that probably is my last video for a bit. I do have some other personal matters I've got to take care of. They are extremely important, but this also was, so I'll move on. That's all from Brian Whitten and ETR for quite a bit. You take care of yourselves, and I'm sure, like I said, don't stress, we will be okay if you're a good person, and even if you haven't been, there's always time. It's called redemption, but I'm absolutely certain redemption has got to come with courage, and with courage has to come honesty. So I talk to everybody there, not just those that are close to me. And that's all from me. Thank you very much. Bye bye.